All right, guys. Very happy to have Keith McCormick as my guest on the Ravit show today. Obviously, Keith has been on my show, I guess 2, 3 months back when he launched a few of his courses. And once again, today here he is. He'll be talking a lot around his new course, Predictive Analytics Essential Training, Estimating and Ensuring ROI, Data Science, Machine Learning, and much more. So this will be happening today, and obviously to just introduce Keith, he is a chief data science advisor at Cloud Factory. He's also a data science consultant, author, trainer, speaker, and everything that I can imagine. He is been everywhere in terms of data science. So very happy to have him today on the Ravit show. Also, just for folks to let you guys know, we are giving away, Keith has decided obviously to give away 3 months of extended trial coupon for LinkedIn Learning. So don't forget to mention hashtag Keith LinkedIn. In the comment section, we'll choose the winner via raffle by end of the show. So let's do this, and without any further delay, let's have Keith here. Hey Keith, welcome
Hey,
to
how
the
are you,
Ravit
Ravit?
show. Welcome back.
Last time was great fun. You know, I think it may have been last year. You know, we're all working from home. You kind of get this time warp thing going on. At least I do. Time flies by very quickly.
Oh yes, definitely. I agree completely. So, Keith, obviously, I would want first things first. Are we giving away something today? I just
Yeah,
mentioned.
we are. So the standard trial. The other thing too is a lot of people may have already used their free trial on LinkedIn Learning. I don't know how familiar everybody is with the platform. So this code will give you 3 months, and you know that's really fabulous that they do that. They, as instructors, they give us a handful of those a year. So that we can do these kinds of events. And 3 months is fantastic because you can do at least a half dozen courses in that amount of time. If you're ambitious, you could do twice that many or more.
And definitely for those who are joining, if you want to enter the raffle and want to win the 3 month trial, you just need to hashtag Keith LinkedIn, and you can put that in the chat. So let's do this. Also, before starting this, Keith, I would want to know, I'm sure the audience would want to know more about you. Why not introduce yourself?
You know, I just thought of something. I'm going to answer your question in a second, but it occurred to me, if someone happens to belong to LinkedIn Learning already and they get picked in the raffle, message us privately and we'll figure something out. Wow, maybe one of the books or something like that, right? So very much focused on LinkedIn Learning. But if it turns out you already have that, then we'll come up with something for you. So Ravit mentioned that, and thanks again for inviting me back. Ravit mentioned Cloud Factory. Cloud Factory is an amazing company. You know, I've been an independent contractor most of my career. So with Cloud Factory, I jumped at the chance, but we worked out a way that I could basically be half-time with Cloud Factory and continue to do the many things I do in the other half of my professional life. So that includes a variety of things. I speak at conferences, I write books. We've already mentioned the LinkedIn Learning, and I'm part of UC Irvine's Predictive Analytics certificate. So I wear a lot of hats, but the Cloud Factory hat is one of the newest ones and one of the most exciting. But today we'll focus on the new course.
Okay, fantastic. So also, since you are out there, you are a trainer, author, speaker, what is that you love the most, Keith? I know it's difficult, but still.
Well, I've got 2 answers for you. How about that? So on when people ask me about my teaching, because the UC Irvine teaching is the most traditional. In fact, actually, it is July 1st today. For those that are looking for some kind of university instruction that would lead to a formal certificate, my course is starting in just under 3 weeks. So you could just Google for UC Irvine and Keith McCormick. But when I'm talking about that part of my professional life, my favorite part of it is grading homework. I know that sounds horrible. Who could possibly like that? And there are days that I need my second cup of coffee to get through the grading. But the reason is that I get to interact with a lot of data scientists that are early in their career and coach them in a way that's very different than just like a Q&A, like in an online course or something like that, because they're actually submitting projects, and I get to review the projects and give them feedback that way and have like office hours. So anyway, I find that very rewarding professionally. And the other answer to the part of my job that I like the most is that since I've been doing this since the 90s now, I find that my consulting is more and more working with the leaders of analytics teams and less hands-on building the models myself. I still do plenty of that, but you know, when you're early in your career and you're building models for a client, you might be able to do 2 or 3 projects a year. And that would be a lot. I mean, that's a busy year. If you have 3 client projects and you're the practitioner, that's a lot of nights and weekends, you know, getting through that. But now that I work with the leaders of teams, I can have some role in a dozen projects a year, rather than being hands-on. I do everything for 2 projects a year. And I find that very rewarding. I've been doing that for about the last decade or so.
Fantastic. I think definitely being a trainer is, and being out there for clients is a big, there's a complete responsibility out there. So how, this is my question, obviously, how different is it for you to, if you would want to suggest to audience, how different it is back then when you were doing projects for clients, obviously in a full-time job, and now being a consultant out there, how different it is? What's the experience?
Well, even then I was working for myself. So even then I was self-employed.
Okay.
If you take all of the, I finished college in 91. So I'm dating myself. So depending how you count, you could say I've been doing this for 30 years. If you count right from then, I've been self-employed virtually all of that time. Maybe 3 years out of the last 30 have I been full-time, salary. So I was independent the whole time, which is, by the way, a choice that not everybody makes. I mean, the vast majority of data scientists are, on salary somewhere. But the big difference is when you get involved, and it's a really powerful thing. Now, in the first year of somebody's career, you probably don't have this option. But once you get established, the beauty of working with analytics leaders like directors and VPs and senior VPs and that kind of thing, the great thing about consulting for them, rather than being the practitioner, is you have a hand in the design of the project, rather than somebody else has already figured out what they want the project to be, and they hand it to you, and then you have to do it. Because a lot of times, projects fail because the design is flawed. So 20 years ago, I didn't have a lot of influence over the design of the project. So a lot of times I would inherit somebody else's design, and it wasn't always fun, Now, I basically always have some creative input into the design of the project, because if not, it's just not a good fit for me at this stage in my career. I have to be able to influence the design of the project. Otherwise, it's just not the kind of project that I would take on.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
Yeah, it does. It does make a lot of sense. Also, Keith, what I was wondering was, since you are a trainer and a data science trainer, what was it that got you close to LinkedIn, and why did you choose LinkedIn as the platform where you would want to put out your courses?
Well, it's interesting because I noticed that you had Ken G on the show not that long ago, and his channel was really about data science education, and getting started. So I'll give a quick answer now, but Ken and I chatted about this a few weeks ago, and we spent an hour just talking about just this. I was contemplating graduate school. I was going to get a PhD. And it may surprise people, but in the 90s, there were no PhDs in data science. They just didn't exist. And there was really nothing like it either. You could get a PhD in computer science, which is really not the same as getting a PhD in machine learning or data science. Because there could have a hardware aspect to it, almost like computer engineering, So even though I was a computer scientist as undergrad, I knew that I didn't want to go in that direction. So I was thinking about a PhD in statistics, specifically a PhD in quantitative quantitative psychology. Probably no one would think about that now, but see, back then you didn't have the data science option. So you had to think about what related department could maybe help me out. So I started out as a trainer to help pay for grad school. I was able to
Oh.
get a job teaching SPSS statistics software.
Mm.
And I did that for years. And that's when I started traveling. So that was the winter of 97, 98. And until COVID, I traveled almost nonstop for those
Oh my.
almost 25 years. Thousands
That's
of hotel
oh.
nights. I was gone much more often than I was home. So that's how I started out as a trainer. I started because there were no Python trainers then. Well, there were Python trainers then, but Python was a much smaller community, and they weren't teaching machine learning with Python. They were teaching Python, you know. So
Mm.
that wouldn't have been a direction that I went in, because that was too much going in the computer science direction. So I had a chance to do this job. I thought I would do it a few weeks a year for extra money, help pay for school, but it turned out to be a career. And for about 10 years, I did that almost nonstop. And then I started to do more and more consulting. So that's how I started out as a trainer. And, after 10, 15 years of training experience,
Yeah.
LinkedIn Learning was just a really good fit. And the way that they found me was the books that I had written. And that's how we spent the last show. If you remember, we were talking about
Very true.
the SPSS books.
SPSS.
Yeah.
I think yes, definitely. So, just for the audience to know how difficult it is to become a trainer at LinkedIn, because obviously it is a big brand. And can you just let us know in short what's like the quick procedure if someone is interested to become a LinkedIn learning instructor?
Yeah, it's different than some people may guess. You would be able to pick up on the process very quickly, Robin. We were talking about a bit about this offline because you have a
Yeah.
background in publishing. So working for LinkedIn Learning is very much like publishing a book. So it's very different than the many marketplaces where you can develop your own course material, do your own video editing and all that kind of stuff. And some folks are extremely good at that. In fact, I think during COVID, there's been a real explosion of people not only developing their own courses, but skipping the marketplace and going directly to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of folks, in fact, a lot of folks that we know that are, connected, with us on LinkedIn
Exactly.
that sell courses directly to young aspiring data scientists, which I think is fantastic. But LinkedIn Learning is quite different. So it's very much like publishing a book. You've got to first you got to find each other. So, and a lot of folks, my acquisitions editor at LinkedIn Learning, for instance, has a book publishing background. So he found me because of my books. In fact, he found a co-author of mine, and it wasn't a good fit for them for a variety of reasons. And then it turned out to be me. So he actually found me. But every time I do a course, and I've done more than a dozen now, I have to write a proposal. Say, what is my topic going to be? What's my potential table of contents? And it is weeks before that proposal is approved and the course gets on the calendar. So it's very much like a book that way, because you have to, just like in a book, you get assigned an editor. In LinkedIn Learning, you get assigned a producer. So that's the big difference. It's heavily curated. So it's a bit tough sometimes to break into that community, because you have to get the attention. You have to get the attention of the editors, just like a book. It's not enough to have an idea for a book. You have to get approved by a publisher. In this case, you're getting approved by, the acquisitions editors over at LinkedIn. But it's an amazing experience because they are so supportive. They send equipment to you. They do sound checks. They do weeks of post-production. There's any number of things that authors can do. They call us authors, again, just like a book publisher. There's any number of things that authors can do to promote their courses, but they do such a huge amount of doing that, So there are some authors that do a lot to promote their own courses, and there are some authors that don't do as much, and their courses still do well because LinkedIn Learning itself is really promoting the library and getting the word out. So it's an amazing platform.
I think yes, definitely. It lets you focus on the content, and all the other things are being managed by them, which is fantastic. So before we get on to a question which is about obviously your new course, Predictive Analytics Essential Training, there was a question here from Mike Nash. I would just like to quickly pick it. Do you find that being freelance? Okay, do you find that being freelance, do you get the flexibility to learn more, or do you have more control? How does it work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The flexibility and the control is super, super important to me, Mike. So now again, if you're asking me this 20 years ago, in fact, 20 years ago, 2001, I was already pretty busy with both training and consulting. But if you ask me then, if a really amazing predictive modeling gig came along that was going to be like a 4-month or a 6-month gig, it would have been extremely difficult at that stage in my career to turn that down. But there's a challenge with that. And that is that if you are full time, maybe not on salary, but if you're a contractor, but you fly out, none of us are flying to client sites lately, but you fly out to the client site, they give you a security badge, you almost like go through an HR process again. You're not being hired, but you're full time on that project.
Exactly.
The challenge with that is you do not have a lot of control. And at the end of those 6 months, you're scrambling to try to find out when that next gig will be, and you can have a lot of gaps. So what I found works for me as a freelancer is more this kind of coaching and mentoring role. I help them with design. I help them establish the team. Are there gaps in the team? Who might they need to hire to fill those gaps? Then I kind of disappear for about a month, maybe having an hour a week Zoom call with them. This is even pre-COVID, on Zoom. And then come back and say, how is the data acquisition going? And then a month later, how is the data prep going? That's really great because I can do 6 or 8 of those concurrently.
Wow.
No, that would be pretty busy. I can do 4 or 5. I can do 4 or 5 of those all at the same time. Keep that going, and they're being very productive. So that I find has given me tremendous flexibility, and I wouldn't trade, freelancing for anything else. Again, I have this relationship with Cloud Factory that I took on because I just love them as a company and I love their mission. So, so I have a real commitment to them in that way. But in the freelancing half of my life, I really need those flexible gigs because otherwise one gig will push out another one. So that's that in a quick version. Now, by the way, we're talking about courses today. I get that kind of question so often. I've actually done a whole course on that. Did we ever talk about that? I don't even know if we've talked about this on the previous show or whatever, but I have a course called Side Hustle for Data Scientists.
Yeah, I remember.
And it's really, even talking about contracts and, should you ask for a retainer or, should you charge by the project or charge by the hour? Anyway, and that was a labor of love for me to do that course because I get this question all the time. I especially get it when I'm doing conference workshops, So thanks, Mike, for that question.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I was just trying to pull up the side hustle course, but I'll keep it for later. And obviously, I wanted to ask about the new course, which is the predictive analytics. So just
yeah, so I always my one word name for that is I call it the ROI course, the return on investment course.
Okay, got it.
The reason is LinkedIn Learning has a naming convention that can be confusing at first. They have these long prefixes. So I think it's Predictive Analytics Essential, Predictive Analytics Essential Learning or something like that, : and then there's like the real name.
Estimating.
The name you want to be focused on is the one after the : right? But there's a reason for that naming convention. And that's because that's how they build the learning paths and the playlists. So all the courses that are the Predictive Analytics Essentials courses would be in the Predictive Analytics Learning Path. So if you're new to the platform, seek out those learning paths. They're really amazing. You can do, in fact, that would be what I'd recommend for whoever wins the 3-month trial. Or if you don't win the trial, just do the 1-month trial on your own. You can still do a lot in a month.
Yeah,
in 3 months, so I hope you win, But check out those learning paths because that will be very focused. And, do the Predictive Analytics Learning Path. And the ROI course is so new, it's probably not in a learning path yet. But many of my courses are on a learning path, and there are so many other amazing instructors that do predictive analytics topics and data science topics. As instructors, we get together once a month on a call, and I'm really impressed with all my fellow instructors on that platform.
Fantastic. So this, for the audience, obviously, this is the course that we are talking about, predictive analytics essential. But as you mentioned, Keith, after the call-in, it's estimating and ensuring the ROI. So
That's right.
this is how it looks like, and yeah, it looks pretty good. So my question was obviously to you, in terms of the course, was since there are many data science and analytics projects that fail, but how can one choose projects that are likely to be successful? Will your course be helpful in this case, or is it something which is
Yeah,
out of topic?
absolutely. So you know what's kind of a funny story, and I can tell this briefly too. It's kind of a funny story how I got the idea for this course, because my most popular course since I started, I first started talking to the LinkedIn Learning folks in 2016, and my first course launched in 2017. And the reason I mentioned that is, again, this whole planning process, that it was months,
Right.
before I physically flew on a plane out to Santa Barbara, California, and you're in a
Okay.
studio, you're in a soundproof booth. It's really very impressive, and that's why the production quality is so high. So there I am. I'm recording these courses, and one of my very first courses was the essential elements of predictive analytics and data mining. It's been my most popular ever since.
Yeah, viral.
So last year, was it last year? It's all a blur. No, it was before COVID, because I did it in the studio. So I recorded a course just like it that was also the high level essentials, but for executives. And
Okay.
one of those lectures, it was just 3 minutes, it was going through a lot of high level stuff. And as you can imagine, an executive course, you
Right.
try to keep it shorter, because,
Yeah.
I'm really looking for C-levels and vice presidents and senior directors and so on to take that course. So you have to be pretty short, pretty compact, keep it moving, right? They're busy folks. So one of those videos was, hey, when you're picking which course to commit money to, do an estimate of ROI before you
ROI.
commit to the project. So somebody said, Keith, that's really important advice. I
Right.
haven't encountered that advice before, but how exactly, step by step, should I estimate ROI? I mean, if you're telling us that that's important to do, you kind of left us hanging here. How should we do it? Now, the
Sure.
senior VP is probably not the one that's going to do the ROI calculation that I walked through in the course, but I realized that comment was so insightful
Exactly.
that maybe it was not obvious exactly how to do the calculation. So that's what gave birth to this course. It's how exactly what to consider
Wow.
to make a rough estimate, because you're not going
Exactly.
to, it's not like doing your taxes each year. This is not going to be exact to the penny. You could be off by $250,000, but you're trying to make a rough estimate sufficient that you can rank the projects in order so that you can do those projects that are most likely to subsidize the team. Now, if you're working for a nonprofit or you're doing certain work, you might think, oh, wow, is it always about money? The short answer is there usually is a monetary aspect, because even if you're a nonprofit, let's say you're working in the area of conservation, let's say, right? Most of these machine learning projects are about making human labor efficient. Right? Are you looking in the right places? Are you working on the right things? Are you repairing the right machines? Are you trying to refinance the right loans? Right? It's all about efficiently using your human labor in the form of salary. So yes, even whether you're for-profit or nonprofit, you're really still trying to find out, are we going to make several $100,000 or a couple $1,000,000 US back from doing this project? Because that's the only way you're going to pay a half dozen salaries over several months, right?
Very true.
So, and you could think, this other project is exciting for other reasons. We're going to get these amazing insights from it. Let's do it for that reason and not worry about the money. Well, that's fine. But if you do that for 2 or 3 years, you're not going to be able to increase your head count. You're not going to get approved to go to conferences and so on, because the team's going to have no money, So you have to stay focused on this as a practical matter. So what I do in the course, with the help of all my post-production and producers and editors and so on, what we accomplish in the course is how exactly to do this. Yeah. So Albert makes the comment,
Exactly.
nonprofits or government, Albert, for that matter, right? Nonprofits and governments still have to show ROI to their donors right? Or to their, everybody's got a balance sheet is the bottom line. Whether you're for-profit, nonprofit, or government, you've got a balance sheet. So what you put on that balance sheet might differ a little bit. So to my friends in for-profit, corporate setting, put your salaries, including your own, all your team members and your own salary in this equation. If you're government or nonprofit, maybe you weigh that slightly differently, but you still have to make the spreadsheet balance.
Very true, and definitely why I know why Albert has commented this, because he belongs to a government background. He's from military, so
yeah,
exactly.
I recognize the name. Yeah, I recognize the name. Yeah.
Fantastic. And also Kate, who is here, she says LinkedIn Learning is great, and obviously she has taken several courses from it. It obviously is one of the best things. Oh, we have Harpreet in the house.
Yeah. Boy, the gang is all here. I recognize a lot of these folks. Yeah, Kate, that's a very kind comment coming from you, because I know how active you are in the space. So you would be a very knowledgeable consumer. But, I have to say, I agree with Kate, because, as an author, I get access to the library, and I consume other instructors' content all the time, hours and hours a month. I always make time to do that. When a new course is released, I check it out. I budget time for that, because it's always worth that time investment.
Yes, definitely. And Suzanne says she's here too. Hi, Suzanne. Yes, definitely the gang is here. Also, Keith, apart from the LinkedIn Learning, obviously you're an instructor there, but what else are you doing? What's the side gig that you are into, or maybe are you training somewhere else?
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to have one of my first business trips. In fact, it will be my first business trip since COVID. I'll be going up to New York to do some training. Looking forward to that. Actually, yeah, it's funny. If you asked me about not just the last couple of months, but the last 2 or 3 years, my answer would be mostly consulting. But over the next month of July, I'm actually doing like several days of private training, which I haven't done for a while, but I'm super excited to do so. But you know what it is everybody's starting to travel again, and one organization in particular that I spoke to, they didn't have a travel or training budget last year for obvious reasons. Their company has rolled that over, so they have a lot of travel and training budget this year. So let's hope that some parts of the world are struggling with COVID at the moment. In the U.S., it's not as bad. We seem to be in recovery mode. Yeah, so let's hope that some of those folks can get out there. And in November, I'll be doing my first conference since COVID, the TDWI conference, which. Again, the gang is all here, but I didn't. I'm scrolling to see if he might be here. Dave on Data, who you would know well, and a lot of the folks, Susan Harpreet, Kate, and so on, would all know. He also speaks at that conference. Yeah. I think we're back to back, unfortunately, at that one, and that forever happens because we like sitting in on each other's classes, but we can't do that when we're in the same time slot. But that's exciting. So their Orlando conference in November is going to be a hybrid conference, but we're going to physically be down there in Orlando, and that's exciting. Yeah, so a lot of training and conference presenting. I've got some consulting going on too, but there's kind of a renaissance in training, I think, this year.
But I'm sure you're very happy to get back to conferences, because that's one of the things you like, and you've always traveled so much and you've been out there. And I remember you speaking last time, I guess, about you, even after your gig, even after you being a speaker, you'll still sit there and listen to all the speakers, and that's something you like.
Yeah, in fact, I have an important online live event, not unlike what we're doing now, but one where I'm the host in November. Wow. That same week of the conference. So I'm thinking, wow, should I call ahead to the hotel and see if I can plug into the wall? Because I would love to be in Orlando the whole 4 days of the conference. Or do I have to? That's the kind of thing that
Exactly.
The folks like
I
us we
think
have to
you've
worry about all
already
the time.
explained.
Do I have to really worry about Wi-Fi, and can I trust hotel Wi-Fi, or can I physically plug, into the wall? But a lot of times at a conference hotel, you can, because you can ask for that. Anyway, that's that's a minute detail, but I bet. I'm curious. So many of my colleagues that present a lot too. Put that in comments. I'm just curious if anybody else stresses about that, about having to do something like a live event like this on the road, and you wonder about whether or not you have to plug in. Am I being paranoid? I'm just curious about all those folks like Susan, Harpreet, and Kate. I'm sure they've run into that before.
Yeah, I'm sure about that. And also, Arpreet mentions that he's always liked your courses and he wants to grow up like you. So, yeah.
Harpreet, so kind. And Harpreet and I had a really great interview a few months back as well. Everybody should seek it out. That was a lot of fun. Again, a real focus on data science education when we spoke.
Yeah, fantastic. I would actually like everyone, obviously, to check out The Artist of Data Science by Harpreet, because it is one of the best podcasts out there. And there's obviously a lot of learning. So, okay, coming back. So obviously, I wanted to know more about your course. But before that, if someone wants to actually, get into a course, if a person like me who's a non-technical guy but wants to get into a course, what would be your recommendation? And it's a very cliche question, I know, but still.
Yeah, no, well, no, it's the kind of question that comes up in almost every event like this, but I think it should, because it's important, and I know it's in everybody's mind. So, common answers. In fact, I saw a poll on LinkedIn, and I apologize that I don't remember who ran the poll, because it could be someone that's on the call right now. And if so, put that in comments and remind me. But there was a poll about, do you look for length? Is cost a factor? I had to answer other for that poll, because the number one criteria for me is I want to find an instructor that has field experience. So I don't look. Yes, of course, I look at the course description, because I want to see if topics that are important to me are included in the course. But chances are they are. If I'm taking a deep learning course, then somebody's going to be talking about neural nets and deep learning and the different types, like convolutional neural nets or whatever. You can usually assume that stuff is in there, right? But actually, I'm going to give two answers. One is, I think most courses obsess over algorithms, but don't put the algorithms in context, like the stuff that you have to do before you run the algorithm and after you run the algorithm, right? So I look for that, which is, I guess, in some ways almost a specialty in mine, because as much as I love teaching algorithms, I spend most of my time talking about before you run the algorithm and after, because I find that nobody else is doing that, right? So that's part of it. But the other thing, again, is I look for field experience. So once I spent maybe 5 minutes looking over the course, and I said, oh, in terms of length and cost and content, it looks pretty good. I'm not going to spend an hour staring at that. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes, but then I'm going to spend 15 minutes on somebody's LinkedIn, not just their resume, but their recent feed. Are they reading interesting articles? Are they keeping up what's going on? Are they working the conference circuit? Does it look like they consult? Now, again, maybe that's a self-serving answer, because I'm looking for people that, like me. I don't know, but the reason I give that answer is that when I'm looking for instructors myself, I really want someone that has applied this somewhere, right? So if I don't see that they've been, in fact, as strange as this sounds, if they've been in the same industry for 20 years, even if it's the same industry as the industry I'm looking for. So for instance, I have a client inquiry recently about a bank and about credit risk at a bank, and wanted to know all the projects I've done in 25 years, specifically around credit risk at banks like them, right? Usually it's it's a bank our size, or a bank in our region, or a bank in our country, or whatever. And a lot of times I'll say, well, I've done 8 similar projects, but none exactly like what you're describing. And they go, oh, no, it's not going to work out, If I actually saw someone that has only done one kind of project for 20 years, that's actually kind of a strike against, to be honest. I really want somebody that's gone from that can show that they've done this kind of stuff in manufacturing and banking and insurance.
Right.
Again, maybe I seek out folks that are similar to myself, but I find that that's incredibly valuable because I want that practical advice. I want those little stray comments that might get added into the course material about how they applied a particular technique that they're talking about. So I don't want just code. I want code and advice, or if it's a no code platform, then whatever form that comes in that they're sharing with you, right? So I want the work product, but I also want some advice.
Okay, since you just brought up a topic which is about no code, I had a question around it. What about the buzz about no code and the low code? What are your thoughts about it?
Well, that's so funny because I have your mug around here, Ravit, but I think it might be downstairs in the kitchen waiting for more coffee. But I've got my Nime mug here. I don't know if people know Nime. Nime is. Nime is a visual programming platform, so it looks like like Alteryx or like SPSS Model or any number of products that look like it. But Nime has been around for many years now, and IBM SPSS Modeler, which probably fewer people know about. It's powerful, but it's also kind of expensive. Yeah. So maybe fewer people know about that because it's not open source. But that was originally called Clementine and was designed in '91 and came out in '94. So what I find almost humorous about this low code, no code thing is that it's like the latest thing. It's kind of everything old is new again. It's is more like it. So as someone that works with analytics leadership, I think that we've gotten a bit obsessed with R and Python in the last few years because you have to think about a whole bunch of other things. A lot of folks will make the claim that if you're using 100% code, you're ready for deployment, right? Because you just give that code over to the data engineers or the IT team or whomever, and since it's code, it's inherently reproducible. I want to know if anybody on the call has experienced that to be true. I have not experienced that to be true. You always have to revise code as you go from a prototype into production. So the notion that you would prototype in low code, no code is somehow going to slow you down in deployment, I don't think it's factually true. So I've always been a fan of that because I'm about being productive throughout all phases of the machine learning life cycle. So I think each team has to make their own decision, and we get a little judgy sometimes, I think, about, you're not sophisticated because, you're not, your whole team doesn't use, Susan just said things always change. Hallelujah to that, Susan, absolutely. I've seen when Python existed but wasn't machine learning. I was already doing this before R was a thing. It may have kind of existed but hadn't left academic conferences yet. So I've seen this change a number of times, and that's why I find it humorous that low code, no code is like this new thing when it's absolutely not. It's been an ongoing discussion for 30 years.
Okay, we have a question.
We're actually getting a lot of feedback on that. You could probably do a whole show. Right? You could probably do a low code, no code panel, or one of our many colleagues could probably put together something like that.
Exactly. Definitely. So, what about this one? Can no code be used for proof of concepts and demos?
Yeah, absolutely it can. So I had a really interesting experience. I was working, I was putting together custom training, but custom training with a lot of hands-on and a lot of projects. This was going to last several weeks. It was going to be a few hours a week over several weeks for a big company that you would all recognize if I mentioned the name. So they wanted to be open source. I said, no problem. This is a private class. We're going to do what you want to do, right? There were about 20 people in the class, and 10 of them wanted R, and 10 of them wanted Python, and they were fighting like cats and dogs. It was crazy. And I said, you know what I'm going to recommend? And a lot of you on the call might be surprised by this, but I said, this is driving me crazy. I'm going to suggest Nime. And I'm going to suggest Nime because at the moment, none of you want to use Nime. Half of you want to use R and half of you want to use Python. But I was able to show them with Nime how they could take the R code and embed it in a Nime workflow, or they could take the Python code and embed it within a workflow. And the reason that I did it is I knew that there were going to be teams of 4 or 5 people And each of those teams was going to have a project lead. And this was an assignment that they had to complete to get certification in this program, because it was a university certification kind of a thing. So it was a big deal. I mean, the company was spending a ton of money on this, but for everybody to complete it, they had to do the homework, but they also had to complete these group projects. And we all know what can happen on group projects is people feel abused or that their colleagues aren't contributing. By using 9, the 9 folks could give the R code to the project lead, and the Python folks could give the Python code to the project lead, and it could be combined into a 9 workflow, and then everybody got along. And they were incredibly resistant for about the first third of that project, but they were won over by the end because it was the best way to get people to collaborate. And that's why I'm a fan of platforms like that, because everybody thinks if it's open source, then it's going to be easy to collaborate. But again, I wonder if anybody on the call has actually found that to be true. It's only true if everybody has identical training experience. And then if you do that, it pollutes your HR process because you end up hiring clones rather than hiring a real team.
Exactly. That's so true. And definitely David also kind of agrees in the same thing, where Python data science models can take up some time to ramp up, but using low code solutions and understand the problem issue gap that is trying to be solved for maybe more efficient. So it really does make sense. And
it's funny. I was afraid I would get some pushback on that, but in all the comments, we're getting very positive feedback that that it's true. You have to have collaboration in a diverse team, and low code, no code can support that.
Yeah, definitely. Also, talking about a little about your course, since you spoke about a prototype a bit, why would you suggest someone not to wait until the prototype, a model to estimate the ROI?
Yeah, this one is so interesting, Ravit. I'm glad that we're talking about it, because what folks figure is I can't estimate ROI unless I have an estimate of model accuracy. And how can I possibly have an estimate of model accuracy if I haven't built the model yet? Okay, well, a couple of things. One is more folks should probably be focusing most of their attention, 80% or more of their attention, on classification models where there's only 2 outcomes. Because if you're trying to predict into let's take a medical example. If you're trying to predict which medical code is going to be my next diagnostic code, good luck. There's, there are folks, and I've done plenty of healthcare analytics, but I'm sure there are folks on the call that know more about it than me. There's more than 10,000, there's 50 or 60,000. Somebody would know the latest number on how many of those diagnostic codes there are. It's crazy. So people will try to do models like that because they figure it's giving them more detail. It's crazy. If you're trying to predict into 2 categories and the data has been forced into balance, which is a common technique, that the model has to be better than 50% accurate or it's not doing anything at all. And, so just assume that it's somewhere between 50 and 80. I know that's an enormous range, but that's probably somewhere where it's going to be. That's not the only number you don't know for sure. There's all kinds of numbers that you have to guess. So it's just not knowing accuracy is not an excuse, because there is a way to do an educated guess. And I'm not trying to be incredibly accurate. I'm trying to tell the difference between a project that might earn me back 150,000 US and one that's going to earn me back 5 million US.
Exactly.
Because which one is the bigger number, right? The 150 could really be 450. The 3 million could really be 1 million. I could be off by, maybe not an order of magnitude, but I could be off by a factor of 2 or 3 in either direction. And I still know that the $2 million project is bigger than the $150,000 project. So that's really what the course is about, is what do we know? What do we not know? What is a reasonable guess of what we don't know? And can we get an estimate that's good enough to put the projects in rough sequence? Right. So that hopefully you're going with a top 3 project and not a project that didn't even make the top 10.
And what, according to you, are the basics of estimating a ROI?
Well, interesting. So what you really have to think about is if you're only trying to predict into 2 categories, there's 4 possible outcomes. And I've got a whole lecture on just this, right? You got true positives, true negatives, and false positives and false negatives. Those are the four possible outcomes. So, we just talked about start with what you know and what you don't know. Try to come up with an estimate of how much business value you get when you get a true positive. How much business value do you get when you get a true negative? So if you're doing something like predictive maintenance, an example of a true positive would be, wow, I took this earth mover out of service and I prevented the transmission from being ruined. And I know that transmission costs $1.1 million. So I just saved myself $1.1 million minus the cost of the fact that I took it out of service for 2 days. So I talk to the subject matter experts and say, if I took this out of service for 2 days, what does that cost me? And they say, well, we're billing that out at $75,000 a day or whatever. So that's like 150. And then there you go. I subtract 1.1 million from 250. These might be rough numbers, but they're enough. So if you're just doing this wild big number, like, wow, this feels like $1 million project, that's not good enough. But if you start to come up with estimates of true positives, true negatives, false positives, and false negatives, and you add all that up and you start to do a little algebra, you're on your way. You can tell the difference between a $100,000 project and $1 million project and a $10 million project.
Definitely. And David does mention that ROI should be estimated closer to the onset of the project. Does make sense.
David, absolutely right, and thank you for the virtual applause just now as well. Yeah. So not only closer to the onset of the project, I would bring this up in conversation within the first hour. Yeah. So let's say I'm talking to a client for the very first time, and we only have a half hour on a call. In that first half hour, maybe not is this coming up, but what I'm basically trying to figure out is how are we going to do the design work? How are we going to even figure out if this project makes sense, right? Because I'm not, at this stage in my career, I'm not going to assume that the project makes sense, and then I'm just going to estimate hours and send them an invoice. That's not the way I work. It's not worth it for me to take on a project that's not going to succeed because it's not good for me and it's not good for the client, right? So it's all going to be design and evaluation early on. So in that first half hour, I might be trying to figure out, am I flying out to you to hang out for a day? Or are we going to do some Zoom calls? How is that working? So the first half hour might be logistics, but the first hour that I'm actually talking about the project, this is on the agenda that very first hour. So this isn't just, you talk about it the first week, you talk about the very, very beginning. And that's why I figured somebody had to do, a course on it, because if it's that early on, and if no one learns this in a university class, then everybody needs a primer, on how to think this through.
Yeah, exactly. And before I pulled a question from YouTube, obviously I wanted to let people know that they have a chance to win 3 months of LinkedIn free trial. And what they just need to do is put a hashtag and say Keith LinkedIn. And let me just quickly pull this up for them. And yeah, we have 16 entries already. Once we hit, I wouldn't obviously bar it, but you guys have a chance because we're close to almost 15
you'll probably hit the magic button within the next 3 or 4 minutes, right, to pull all those hashtags. I really love doing that, by the way, because we make a really good effort to keep our eye on the comments, but it's easy for something to slip by. So I love that is automated. That's really fancy.
Oh, yes, definitely. Quickly wanted to pull this question. Obviously, we were talking about low code, no code. There was a question from Abhishek, and it's obviously a talk of the town, the Copilot by GitHub and OpenAI. So what do you feel about it? Have you had a chance to have a look at it? Did you try it?
I try to stay up to speed on stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's an end of quarter thing, because I cannot tell you how many client inquiries I've gotten in the month of June. It's been crazy. It's been like that for weeks. So I'm sure the Copilot conversation has been going on for a long time, but I cannot speak to that one. I'm afraid. Yeah, but who knows? Maybe there'll be some conversation about it below the talk today in the LinkedIn comments. And maybe I can try to take a look down the road, but I'm not familiar with it at the moment. So sorry about that. I can't speak to that one.
No worries. Also, Suzanne does mention that if she wins, she'll obviously donate it to TCG LinkedIn Treasure Hunt. She's come up with a interesting treasure hunt. So guys, do not forget to tune in to her treasure hunt. Quickly wanted to take another question about analytics from YouTube itself. It's by Daksh Kinvasra. What do you think is the best approach to get into analytics? Interesting question.
Well, obviously I'm a fan of the LinkedIn learning platform. So let me elaborate on why. I think the problem is that sometimes we spend hours and hours and hours trying to find the material that we need. Like just going onto YouTube, for instance, right? I mean, you and I both have good friends that have excellent YouTube channels, but you can spend the whole weekend looking for a good channel and you just kind of going in circles, and the next thing you know, you've done that for about an hour and the YouTube algorithm is desperate to get you to watch cat videos, and stuff, and you get distracted and everything. So I have to admit, I'm a really big fan of the LinkedIn learning platform because those learning paths are so great. You start on one of those learning paths, it might be 30 hours of amazing content, but that someone has very thoughtfully put that together. It's in a logical order and it's not going to overlap, and you just plug through it. It might take weeks to get through that much content because there might be projects and exercises, that you're doing along the way. So, now, in terms of things like data science undergrad and data science masters and data science PhDs, it is so hard to navigate that now because, again, I'm only early 50s. It's not like I'm an elderly guy, but when I was in my 20s, these degrees didn't exist, So I'm a fan of IADS. It's the IADSS. So maybe you could put that in. I don't think StreamYard is letting me put that into comments, but you could, or we could call it up online. So anyway, that is a nonprofit that was founded by Usama Fayyad and his co-founder Hamid, and I was part of a KDD workshop last year, which you can find on YouTube. So it's not behind a firewall or anything like that, but where we talk about the academic option and how diverse these different programs are. So that would be a longer answer than I could give now. So if the nature of your question was, what can I find online to get started in analytics, then my recommendation stands. If you're looking for something more academic, that's a whole big thing. There's been an explosion of programs, and I gave a talk last year that kind of got into that a little bit.
Fantastic. So before I ask another question, obviously there's an interesting question from Mike, and I want to take that question because it looks interesting. So what is the hardest in ML? What is the hardest thing to teach?
I'm going to give what's probably a surprising answer. You know how we were talking about like design and all the things that you do before you model? In some ways, that's the hardest thing to teach because you eventually start to feel like you're twisting someone's arm whenever you're not talking about algorithms. So when I'm speaking at a conference and we're putting together a workshop and they say, hey, Keith, we'd like you to do a full day workshop. What would you like to do? I might say, well, I want to do project design, ROI estimation, and all these things. Oh, I don't think anybody's going to want to go to that because, they really want kind of like a coding workshop. And I'm thinking, well, this is what I know helps my clients the most, but sometimes it's difficult to get in front of an audience with that topic, even though by the end of the day, they're cheering me on, right? So that's probably not the nature of your question, Mike, but I can't teach it if I can't get in front of an audience,
Exactly.
So, it won't surprise you, for instance, that on LinkedIn Learning, my decision trees course and my ensembles course gets more views than my side hustle or my non-technical skills of data scientist, right? So it's sometimes with reluctance that I try to get a chance to teach these topics that I know that are important, but that don't experience as much demand. So at a certain point, I'm far enough along in my career that I just say, the heck with it. I know that this is important. I'm going to teach it anyway, and it will eventually find its audience. So again, it might not be the direction that you were looking for, but I thought that was important to say.
Yeah. Definitely. And yes, Sudhani says here, thanks for putting the course together. Obviously, it takes a lot to put courses. Keith, obviously, I had this question about courses since we are talking. I know every quarter there's a course or that you create, or maybe every 2 months or 3 months.
Oh, God.
So, when is it? When is the next course coming out? Obviously, I know this is just 1 month
Yeah.
old, but I can't wait for the next courses. When are
Well,
they coming?
it's very flattering for you to suggest that I could produce them in that volume. And maybe there are a couple instructors that can, but it takes me more than 2 months to do them. So maybe 3 a year. Maybe someday I'll do 4 in a year if I really stay caffeinated.
Wow.
But my next one is going to be pretty amazing, and I'll be recording it in the fall. But it might not come out until January. Isn't that crazy? But the thing is, maybe they'll slip it in, around the holidays or so. Because I'm working on one now that's a revision, because we update the courses every 3 years or so, and that's my Essential Elements course is going to get a whole new book, so that's exciting. But the next new course in the queue is on explainable AI, and I'm super excited about that. Yeah, so I've already submitted a table of contents, and the topic has been approved, and it's gone through the proposal process, and then it has to get put on my calendar to be recorded and so on. And that's really going to be amazing because that's a hot topic. But
Exactly.
I looked at it quite recently, and there's an explosion of conference talks and YouTube videos on it, but very few courses on it. In fact, I'm not even sure there are any. But it's badly needed because it's super important. Because if you're going to do deep learning and other black box techniques, you've got to deal with explainable AI and interpretable machine learning. So that's next in the queue, and I'm very excited about it. But again, this process takes several months.
Yeah, definitely. Explainable AI is very hot, and I remember there's just one book which has come out, which is by Denise Rothman, which is on explainable AI. But yeah, courses I don't know. So I can't wait for you to come out with that course. And yeah, so Keith, obviously it was fun chatting with you, but why not let's do the raffle for the audience.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this. So let's see who the winner is.
Yes.
And Susan, your offer to send it back out into the world is very generous. So let's see what happens.
Exactly.
But we've had a really good crowd today. So you never know what name is going to come up.
Yeah, we have 23 entries. All the best, everyone. Here you go. Awesome.
And again, don't hesitate to email us privately if perchance you are a LinkedIn premium member and already have access to the library. Exactly. We will. Bharat, there you go.
Okay. Bharat, congratulations for winning 3 months of free trial of LinkedIn Learning. I'm sure you'll make good use of it, and you'll go and obviously watch out courses by Keith McCormick. So that's we have a few comments here, obviously about explainable AI. Keith, people are looking forward to it already. So it's one of the.
Oh wow, that's fantastic! I will tell my colleagues that that people like that topic. That's great news.
Yeah. Awesome. So Keith, it was fantastic talking to you again. I can't wait to have a 3.0 session with you, because I'm sure whenever we are close to publishing or releasing your course, you obviously visit the Ravit show, and I always invite you. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. But for the audience, if anyone wants to reach out to you and have some questions around your course, which is the best place, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, and I may have been a little bit pessimistic about the timeline. Maybe the XAI course will be out by the holidays. Let's see. I will keep everybody posted. So I hope everybody's following me on LinkedIn, so they'll see the news when I know more.
Yeah. Awesome. So Keith and the audience, thank you, Keith. And the audience, if you want to check out the latest course by Keith, it's up in the link. I've shared it. So don't forget to tune in. And thank you very much, Keith. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.